Alrighty, this game 3, isn't it? Game 3, except it's not. I think this is actually the first game that these two guys played, and I have had it confirmed. It is Ryan versus Jake. So this is Jake, I believe, playing as the Protoss. This is Ryan playing as the Terran in the bottom right of Triton. So what are we going to have happening here? Pretty standard opening. In terms of, it's just a depot at the top of the ramp, and that can be useful against Protoss. One of the things Protoss can do early in the game is crack out those adepts that can get up into your base and get a bit of damage done. So, you know, walling off the top of the ramp isn't a crazy idea. As in general as Terran, you know, unless I'm against the Zerg, I generally prefer to wall off down here. It's obviously a much bigger area to wall off, so you don't get it finished quite so soon. But you know, as I said, unless you're playing against Zerg, you can normally get it finished off quickly enough to keep out things like adepts and stuff. So yeah, looks like Jake coming in for a little look around. Comes in with the worker, sees that everything's normal. It's quite an early scout, and you know, again, depending on what you're up against, depending on what sort of style you think they might play, early scouts can be useful. But oftentimes you turn up too early, what you're going to see, you know. So I don't know. With that said, the one thing you do want to see when you send a scout that early is this. You see the barracks building at home, and it just tells you that it isn't sort of two barracks being built right outside your own base. Because if you suspect someone's proxying you, there's quite a lot of places you need to look to check whether or not they're building stuff right outside your base. But if you go across the map, there's only one place you need to look. If they're building it outside your base, then it isn't here. So as soon as you see that, that's fairly reassuring. Yeah, so a couple of workers in gas here for Ryan. No sign of an add-on or anything yet, and is starting that wall off on the low ground. In Protoss land, we've got this really early forge. Not 100% sure what the rationale behind that is. You know, in general, you might get a forge so that you can build cannons for defense, and that's not a terrible thing to do. Cannons defensively at the front door can be useful. Cannons out the back of the mineral line can be useful. You know, but it's unusual to have it this early in the game. If I'm playing against the Terran, I'm probably thinking at some point they might drop Marines into the back of my mineral line, and a cannon can buy you a bit of time with that, or they might drop Widow Mines, and a cannon is perfect to defend against that stuff. But you know, both of those things can't really happen until medevacs are out and such, so you don't need the forge desperately early. So normally a really early forge you would only do if you're going to be putting on pressure with a cannon rush, or indeed if you're going for some fairly radical build where you just want to wall off this front door with a couple of cannons and go for a very early expand with no units. But that's not what we're seeing here. Jake is building units. He's got some zealots up already, and 4 gateways here suggest that he's going to be cranking out zealots for a while. You can see the +1 attack coming, upgrade coming, and that is not that's not the upgrade that you want to get first when you're playing against Terran. I've probably mentioned this before in other casts. You know, Terrans are always going to have Marines, certainly early in the game, and the way that Marines do damage is that they do lots of little bits of damage quickly. So with that in mind, if you get the armor upgrade, you're removing 1 from each one of those little bits of damage, and therefore it makes quite a big difference. So it tends to be armor that you go for first against a Terran in general. You know, but with all of that said, upgrades are good things, and it's nice to see the players getting some upgrades. It's always a good sign that we're moving towards a stage in the tournament where we've got like well upgraded armies going into engagements and stuff. You know, when the game starts to when you start to play at a level where where players are very even, and you're going into battle. Certainly if you watch pros play, things like upgrades can be absolutely crucial, and they will scout each other to see the timings of upgrades and stuff, because if you know that your +1 is going to be finished 30 seconds before their +1, you'll try and force an engagement in that 30-second window. Now this is the EMS Noobs League. I'm not expecting anything quite like that, but yeah, it's still cool. Cool to see these upgrades happening. That's a lot of pylons in production. Possibly a bit supply blocked for a second there, and the armor upgrade is now just started. So Iran, meanwhile, it's got the factory building, and that's going to allow him to get some mech units, siege tanks, and those types of things up. Siege tanks, brilliant defensively. You can sort of build a wall. I wonder where that scan is, right in the middle of the main base. So does see these 4 gateways, and sees that they're building stuff, sees what they're building as well, catches the edge of these zealots too. Yeah, so a pretty good scout from that scan for Ryan. Yeah, so I was saying siege tanks incredibly useful. You do need the tech lab to build them. Once the tech lab's finished, a couple of siege tanks behind a wall are just super effective at keeping your base safe against frontal attacks. They can also be really good to protect you against drops as well. A siege tank in a position like here just means that anything that comes in and tries to harass your workers is going to get blasted by the siege tank. And that can be really useful too. So, upgrades happening in terms of the engineering bay, armor being upgraded now, and +1 attack, and combat shield is done for these Marines as well. As I was saying about the Protoss wanting to get armor if they're up against Marines, conversely, if you're the Terran player, +1 attack is probably what you want to get out for your Marines, because that makes the biggest difference in terms of how an engagement is going to go. Okay, no rally point has been set here for these workers. That's why they're just kind of hanging about here, just chilling. So just a little reminder, when you start the game, your main base is automatically rallied to the minerals, so any workers you build will automatically go about their business. But any subsequent base you build is not, so you do have to set that rally point. So Ryan going to have a little wander up the ramp here with a couple of Marines just to see what's what, and does see what's what, and what's what is that there's loads of cannons at the front door. So that's useful to know. What sort of things can you do about that? If you do, I quite like that. I like the sort of just send a couple of Marines up and sort of see what they get shot by. Because 1 Marine is actually cheaper than a scan, isn't it? If you lose a couple of Marines, it's cost you 100 minerals. A scan means that that's a mule that you haven't dropped, and that's 270 minerals or something like that. So nothing wrong with that. If you do see a lot of cannons like that, you think to yourself, it's going to be pretty ugly trying to push up that ramp, so why not go around it? That is what's missing from this game at present. I'd love to see some drop play. I'd love to see some, there are medevacs being built. I'd love to see some Marines loaded up into the medevac and dropped into the back of this base to try and get some damage done. Or I'd like to see from the Protoss maybe a warp prism for the same reason, to get around and get some damage done, get some hurt on. But it's round 1 of the EMS League, and it is following standard form, and standard form in the EMS League is sit back, build up an army on 2 bases, and then at some point they click across the map. And that's okay. That's okay for now. So this worker in the middle of the map stands by this thing. These Selnaga towers give you vision in quite a large range. So if we look from Jake's point of view, you can see how far the vision range is for those. So most maps have got these frequently in the middle, sometimes dotted around the place. And if you've got a unit on them, you get that vision range. If there is one of your opponent's units on it as well, neither of you get that vision. So they can be really useful in terms of, because the vision range is so large, if a bunch of units move out onto the map, there's a very high chance you'll see them in the mini-map, even if you're not the most observant player ever. So I'm pretty sure I just saw a Phoenix building, and there it is. unusual to build one Phoenix. They're not that useful on their own. The Phoenix as a unit, I like a Phoenix. They fly very, very quickly, and they have a sort of gravity beam, so they're able to lift ground units up. But they're not able to shoot things that are on the ground. They can only shoot stuff in the air. But using the energy that you can see building up there, they can lift stuff. So if you've only got one Phoenix, they cannot lift and shoot at the same time. So one Phoenix cannot possibly kill a ground unit. You need at least two, so one Phoenix lifts and the other one shoots it. Now they don't do very heavy amounts of damage, but they're very, very quick units. So generally what you want to get up is maybe 5 Phoenix, and because they're so fast, you can fly into a worker line, lift up a worker, bam, lift up a worker, and if you've got 5 Phoenix, I think 3 Phoenix actually one-shots a worker. So if you've got 5, each worker that you lift is one-shotted by the other Phoenix. So you can just fly in, lift, kill 5 workers and fly out again before your opponent's had a chance to respond. They're actually so quick that even if there's a turret in there, you can kill 5 workers and get out again before losing a Phoenix, before really taking any significant damage, even just shield damage. So they're really good for that sort of thing. The scan this time does see the Stargate, so if Ryan's paying attention, he will be able to kind of look inside here and see what's building. You can see the outline of the Tempest building there. That's kind of cool. Again, Jake's got this weird path thing where look how slow his units are to walk through here. And I don't like that. I just don't like this positioning. I prefer the front to be a bit more open so that my units can freely move back about inside my own base. You know, you've got plenty of wide open spaces where you could have built stuff. There's no need for it to all be clustered around this area. Anyway, minor gripes. Yeah, over here, this third base for Ryan, he's turned into a planetary fortress. I quite like that. You know, it's a bit map dependent, but if you look at the sort of army positioning that you're likely to have in this map, you probably want your army somewhere over here. My personal choice would have been this one for the third base, because then you can put your army somewhere about this region, and if anything tries to move into the main, the army isn't too far away. If anything comes at the third, the army's not too far away, so you can spread your army about here and defend both of those pretty easily. This location is a little bit further away, so I'd normally take this as my fourth, but I think the planetary is not a bad choice for this, because it's a reasonable walking distance and there's 2 paths in here, so you know, a bunch of enemy units could come in here and try and snipe your base. If it's a planetary, that is so much harder to do for 2 reasons. One, the planetary is heavily armored and has a substantial amount of can take a substantial beating before it dies. And the second thing is because it actually shoots and does splash and stuff, if you repair it, it is very hard to efficiently kill a planetary fortress. You tend to lose a lot of units, so it can buy you time. So both of these armies move, and Ryan's had a bad time here, and as much as his medevacs have pathed separately from the rest of his units, the way to avoid doing that is to highlight all your medevacs, hit A, attack move, and then click one of your marines. The medevacs will then follow that marine. If you highlight the medevacs and right click the marine, they'll pick it up, so you have to A click. But these medevacs needed to be in position. Now it's a lot of marines, but it is also a lot of zealots, and I think the Protoss here is just going to crush through. There's just too much Protoss here. So the siege tanks in the back only now sieging up. And I can't help but wonder if that fight would have went a little bit differently had they sieged up a bit sooner. I'm just going to rewind quickly and have another look at this engagement. If I can just zoom out here. So yeah, these marines have become separated. They're fighting initially with no medevac support. They don't have stim, I believe, and they allow these slow zealots to walk around them. So what you wanted to do really was pull the marines back, so that the zealots don't get that full surround. You definitely wanted to not be fighting before your siege tanks were in. And once the siege tanks turn up and they're on their own, you don't really want them sieged up because the zealots can get up in their face. So a less than perfect engagement that looked much more one-sided than potentially it could have been. Certainly the Protoss numbers have been reduced. You look how damaged all of these units are. Another couple of siege tank volleys with the splash damage could have made quite a big difference there. Protoss is going to come into this area. This siege tank once sieged up as well, somewhere useful. This one, nothing quite in range yet, but it will be in range as soon as it comes up here. So these siege tanks are going to do pretty well, but there is still just too much Protoss here. And the tanks just don't have enough support. So they are eventually going to go down to this. And I think the Protoss largely at this point just A clicks for the win. Not really enough production at home for Ryan. All the minerals he's got, but look, there's only these 2 barracks to produce from, and really by this stage in the game, you want to have like 12 barracks or something. The Thor comes out, but it's set to a rally point, so it isn't actually doing any shooting or anything like that. So it does not look like our Terran player is going to find a way back into this game, and I suspect there'll be a GG shortly. Yeah, okay, so what I'll probably do is, no, actually I'm not sure I can do that. I was going to say I'll have a look at the army value graphs and stuff at the end of the game, but because it's from a replay, I'm not sure whether it will let me do that. I don't think it does. But I'd be interested to see what the army value graphs look like in that engagement, because it looked pretty one-sided, with some with a slightly better, with a concave and siege tanks in position. That engagement could have went quite differently. But anyway, there it is. GG.